If you like action movies, today's the day for you. It's Dolph Lundgren and Jean-Claude Van Damme in Universal Soldier, and I'm going to talk about it next on Drew Reviews. So, guys, I have to preface this review by saying I love Universal Soldier. Of my favorite movies of the year 1992, it's number one or two, right there with Under Siege. I don't know which one I like best. Some days it's Under Siege, some days it's this. This movie, of course, was directed by Roland Emmerich, and this is by far my favorite movie of his, by a country mile. It's not even close. You can have Independence Day, The Day After Tomorrow, all that stuff. This is my Roland Emmerich movie right here. And just some great performances by Dolph and by Jean-Claude Van Damme, especially Dolph. He kind of steals the show. I'm busting heads. I just love that. A funny story that I was just listening to on The Art of Action. It's a podcast hosted by Scott Adkins, who's a great martial artist. And I think he's probably be a really good James Bond if given the chance. But he had Dolph, I believe it was episode 14, if you want to check that out. And they were talking about this movie on there. And at the time, Dolph had never met JCVD. And the very first day of shooting, they're rehearsing the scene there in Vietnam where he sticks the gun out. And Van Damme kicks it out of his hand. And the first take, Van Damme's got those heavy boots on. And he just lays into it and knocks the gun out of his hand. And Dolph says, okay. And they go for the second take. And same thing. Just kicks it even heavier the next time. And apparently Dolph went over to Vic Armstrong, the stunt coordinator, said, if he does that one more time, I'm going to knock him out. And he saw him go over to Van Damme. And he said the next time he got kicked, it was like a kiss. It was great. And they were friends from that point on. And you kind of feel that camaraderie in this movie when you watch these two guys share a scene together. Of course, at this point, 30 plus years on, everyone knows the plot of Universal Soldier. They're these Vietnam soldiers who, in a traitorous act, that they killed each other, and they end up being reanimated 25 years later through this government program, this kind of shadow conspiracy thing, and they're sent out on these missions, like that first one there at Hoover Dam. I'll get into action in a little bit, but that's the basic plot. Devereaux, played by Van Damme's trying to figure out who he is. He keeps getting these flashes in his mind of his past, and Lundgren plays Sergeant Andrew Scott, who I have to say I love, and not only because that is my first and middle name, but and at times I'm a little bit maniacal, maybe not to that extent, but I love him in this movie. But he is very maniacal in this, and everyone's a traitor to him, and so he's going after Devereaux. And that's the basic plot of this movie, and it's fantastic. As I said before, the action is great. There's that great scene, the siege at Hoover Dam, where they go in and take these terrorists out, and I believe it's Dolph on the line, and he's actually running down the dam. That's a great scene. I love that. There's that scene where they're in that seedy hotel room, and I really like that clerk. He's just off. I like how whoever that actor was added that to that character, and I like that whole scene where Van Damme's trying to get away and he keeps busting through walls, and finally he runs into that brick wall and go ahead, bust through it. That was pretty good. The scene where the gas station blows up, I really love. That's a huge explosion. And it was fantastic. One of my favorite scenes in this movie is that whole diner scene where they go in and Van Damme orders all the specials. And of course, the lady jumps to conclusions. It's like, hey, we got a stiff here. And I just want to eat. I love that scene. And then takes everybody out. I really like that. Just this honky-tonk dive that these guys are in way over their heads against JCVD. There's just so many great action scenes in this movie. The fight at the Grand Canyon, where that big chase is going on, and they're in the prison bus, and Lundgren's lobbing grenades. And that is wild how they kind of go out there to that point, and the thing rolls, and just a breathtaking view in that scene. And then the final scene in the rain. That battle is fantastic. Love it. There's some shots there that are very reminiscent of Terminator, where Van Damme, he's raising up and there's fire behind him. I kind of laughed at those, but just love the martial arts in that scene. And the entire time, Lundgren's giving it to him, being a traitor and everything. Just love that. You're going to be court-martialed, soldier. Just some great lines, so over the top, but so good. Another scene I really like is the supermarket scene where all the Unisols have been, blown up in that gas station, and Dolph comes dragging them in. It's like the whole blanking platoon's dropping like effing flies. That's the scene where he's talking about kicking ass and busting heads, and to the whole time there's this music in the background, just setting the soundtrack to this scene, and it's hilarious. There's some very well thought out shots in this movie too, like there at the end where Devereaux tries to put Veronica on that bus and take her back to LA, so he can go home. And the bus takes off, and she's still standing there, and the bus behind her takes off, and all the police are there. That's a great reveal, and that's also one of my favorite shots in the movie. Just very cleverly done there. On the con side, Ally Walker as Veronica Roberts, she's very hit and miss to me. There's scenes where her line delivery is really bad, like they're in that prison bus, and then there's other scenes where she does pretty good. It's too up and down. It's kind of like a toilet seat. It's up and down. Edo Ross in this, I love, and Edo Ross is definitely the best actor in this movie. He was in Red Heat with Arnold, and in one of my favorite underrated movies, The Hidden, which I've reviewed on this channel. He's definitely the best actor in the movie, but he's only in it for like an act. And to me, that's kind of a con when you have somebody that good and you kill them off so early in the movie. But I guess you kind of had to, because Dolph kind of had to take command of the Unisols for this story to progress forward. But other than that, and I believe was that Opie Taylor as Devereaux's dad there at that farm? I don't buy him as Jean-Claude Van Damme's dad. I'm sorry. I just don't. But other than that, I really enjoy Universal Soldier. It's one of those seminal action movies of the 1990s for me. Like I said, there with Under Siege, there with Speed, Terminator 2. This is below Terminator 2 and Speed just a little bit, but not by much. I really enjoy it. Overall, I'm going to give this movie 7 3/4 out of 10. I think it's fun. It's definitely better than what came after it. I like Universal Soldier: The Return for the campiness. I think it's fun. I think that movie probably gets crapped on just a little bit too much because it's just a fun popcorn movie. But the sequels that came after it, Universal Soldier: Regeneration, whew, I reviewed this a few reviews ago on this channel. That was rough. And Devereaux has none of the charm in that movie. That movie has none of the charm that this movie has. And it was kind of rough to get through, other than Dolph Lundgren's performance, which was fantastic. I can't really recommend watching that unless you're just a completist. And I've not even watched Day of Reckoning. Regeneration put such a bad taste in my mouth. It's the same director, and I'm like, I really don't know if I want to sit through that, because that looks even more artsy-fartsy. And other than seeing Dolph, who's one of my favorite action stars, I don't know that I want to sit through that. And I really don't know how much he's in that movie. So guys, let me know what you think of Universal Soldier down in the comments. I really think that last action scene, the fight in the rain with all the kicks, and the big syringe that he has to put in his chest, and the fire, and the dredger that they have there that Dolph ends up impaled on and then going through. I really think that is one of the top fight scenes of the 90s. That might be the bold statement for the day, but I really do enjoy that scene and all the corny dialogue that's going on during that scene. It's good to see Van Damme and Dolph here and the chemistry that they have. So yeah, 7 3/4 is where I'm going to go for this one. Feel free to comment what you would rate it down below. So guys, I'm really not sure what I've got coming up next. Kind of want to do Tremors, because that's kind of a fun creature feature with some pretty decent acting and some great dialogue. But I also kind of want to stay action. Let me know which way you want me to go down in the comments. Really enjoying digging into the low-budget action movies, like Deadly Outbreak and Zero Tolerance. So possibly something like that coming up next. If you like what you see, guys, I'd love for you to support the channel. Hit the like and subscribe and interact down in the comments. And until next time, this is Andrew, and you've been discharged.